things that I was particularly taken with in the book is throughout, you talk about people not in an individual context, but you talk about the approach of friction fixers as being very thoughtful about the time and energy of other people. And really leaning into that, and making the things that ought to be easier, and making the things that really should be a little harder. And you talk about one of the example of Theranos, a military provisioner not allowing those machines to be put on,
Oh, so let's talk about Theranos, because Theranos is a really interesting example because it was a case where Elizabeth Holmes and her team, and sometimes this is also a hallmark of feeling overly privileged. They really did act like the rules didn't apply to them.
Mhm.
And the story we talk about in the book, very well documented, is that at one point she wanted to put that testing machine on U.S. Army helicopters, and it hadn't gone through FDA approval. And she had General Mad Dog Mattis pushing for it and everything. But in the end, the folks in the Army said, no, you can't put them on the helicopter because it didn't go through FDA approval. So she thought it should be a frictionless process. But then there was a very brave lieutenant colonel who also was a PhD scientist who stopped her, and he had to fly down and meet with Mattis. And even Mattis, who initially wanted to sort of like put pressure on this guy to have him put it on the helicopter, even Mattis finally agreed that that's what the rules were. And in a contrary case, just to show that not all of our Stanford students are dropouts and are terrible people, and we talk about this a little bit in the book, but I really want to underline it. There's two women in the book, Greta Meyer and Amanda Calabrese. They started a company called Sequel at Stanford. They actually took every entrepreneurship class together. Sequel is reinventing the modern tampon so it leaks less. They're both student athletes. And you talk about a market, talk about a real problem. And they took all the entrepreneurship classes. They graduated. They're not dropouts. They just got FDA approval for their product, and they're working on. Hopefully, they're going to be enormously successful with Procter and Gamble and companies like that. There's a lot of market forces against them. But I was just talking to Greta, the CEO, last week, and she said, yes, we're very proud of the fact that we have reinvented a product that really hasn't changed in 80 years. That's her line. So I don't know if that's true, but it's a good line. But the point I want to make about what Greta and Amanda did was they slowed down. I mean, their product got held up for a year and a half getting FDA approval, and I think it's glad I'm happy that it has FDA approval. So anyways, there are times you got to, if you will, hit the brakes so you can go faster later and not be unethical either.
Right. And one of the examples you use in the book is the case of BHP. And just in terrible situation, and the new CEO comes in, and everybody, of course, wants him to take immediate action. And he says, we're not doing anything right now.
I love that, because like he's a turnaround expert, Paul Anderson, and he says, we are not doing anything today, but so he's interesting because, and a lot of this goes back to one of our, in the behavioral sciences, intellectual heroes, Daniel Kahneman. Daniel Kahneman, his book about fast and slow, basically makes the argument: when you know what to do, it's fine to go fast, but when you're in a cognitive minefield, when you're confused, when things are messed up, that's when you sort of slow down and figure out what's going on. So what Paul Anderson did, amazing. So BHP, Broken Hill Property, used to be called whatever, it's the largest mining company in the world. It's just enormous. And they were losing a lot of money, about $1 billion a year. And they brought in this American, Paul Anderson, a very experienced executive. He'd been CEO of Duke Energy and stuff. And his theory was he was going to get a little memo from each of the top 80 people. What's your job? What would you do if you were me? Things like that. And then he talked to all of them, and then he figured out what to do, and including firing some of them, by the way. So I mean, that's what happens when you're in the top 80. But I sort of like that that analogy of sort of like the gas and the brakes. That's one we've been using a
Mm.
little bit more. That even the best race car drivers, they know when to hit the gas, they know when to hit the brakes, and they know when to take the pit stop, and they also know when to quit. Because the car won't work anymore. So
Mhm.
I think a lot of organizational life has an analogy to that.